Okay, so who am I and why am I qualified to talk about Bitcoin wallets? This is important, really important topic tonight. Bitcoin wallets are, I'd say, the most important part of Bitcoin for you because it's your key to the future financial freedom that Bitcoin will bring. If you don't have any Bitcoin in your wallet, you're probably not going to get a lot of the benefits of Bitcoin's future freedom. Show of hands, how many self-custody Bitcoin today? We got a lot of work to do. No one's hand should have been up there. OPSEC, y'all. So you should never, ever tell someone you self-custody Bitcoin because the first thing you're going to think is it's at your home. So we're starting off strong, y'all. So I already introduced myself. I'm Zach. I'm chairman of the space, and the board says I'm also CTO. I don't really think I am, but I say that's Jeff, but that's my title. I'm also sales manager at Casa, so I've been working in wallet self-custody for the last 4 years, and I've been organizing the Denver BitDevs meetup, which the space kind of came about out of for the last 2. Now handed that off to Hunter, and he is an actual Bitcoin Core developer who's working on quantum-resistant address formats for Bitcoin. A little bit more qualified to run the BitDevs, I'd say. But I'll lead this intermediate workshop today. I'm also a former financial advisor, so I've lived the fiat life and the Bitcoin life, so I know what it's like to be trapped in the echo chamber on both sides. I'm also a very, very big evangelist of self-custody. If you are holding custodial Bitcoin, you do not have Bitcoin. I'm an on-chain maximalist, I think, and we'll talk about this tonight. I think Lightning has a long way to go, and I say that from someone who ran a Lightning node in the past and was big into it. That said, Bitcoin is evolving really quickly, so I don't think it's, I don't think we should write it off. Always use coin control. If you don't know what that is, you will after tonight. And boating accident survivor. So I have lost Bitcoin, and it sucked. So I'm going to live through that experience and hopefully teach you from that lived experience so that you don't. So hopefully that's a resume. Oh, and I'm BTC BAP on X if you want to follow what I tweet, although I don't tweet very much. So my goal here is to teach you about the basics of Bitcoin, and if you get nothing else away, you're not managing Bitcoin. You're managing keys. Everyone manages keys. Who's got keys in their pocket? I took mine out, so it weren't rubbing on my... Everyone knows how to manage keys. These are digital ones instead of physical ones. That's it. You just can't make a copy. Actually, you can, but just make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. So we'll go through some basic concepts. Where does the Bitcoin live? It's my favorite question. How did wallets kind of come about? How did they evolve? How did we get to where we are today? Some key concepts: addresses, private keys, public keys, signatures, different types of wallets, hot wallets, cold wallets, multi-sig wallets, lightning wallets, all the wallets. Different features of Bitcoin transactions: lock time, RBF, CPFP, and then some BIPs, which are Bitcoin improvement proposals, and the kind of the inner workings of your Bitcoin wallet. We'll go into Lightning a little bit, I already said that, eCash, and then we'll go through best practices and Q&A. So I'm gonna probably keep this to like 30, 45 minutes. Joey, keep me honest on time, 6:40. And then we'll open up for Q&A and we'll go through a interactive session. So if you have a phone, you can download a free mobile wallet. I work for Casa, we'll use Casa. It's easy, you don't have to write the seed phrase down or anything, it just saves it on your phone. So it's really easy, and we'll send and receive on testnet. So I have 20 testnet Bitcoin that I'm just gonna send out, and you can send them back, send twice as many back, see how that works. You guys don't know that joke, huh? All right, where are the Bitcoins? Where are they? They really don't exist. They really don't even exist. But for this purpose, Bitcoin are entries on a public ledger. What's that called? The blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain. It's the only blockchain that really matters. Anybody can make a blockchain, but it's the unique properties of Bitcoin's blockchain that have brought millions of people over the world to gravitate to it. So a wallet manages your keys, not the Bitcoin. The coins are not in your wallet. They're on the blockchain. So imagine there's a safety deposit box in cyberspace. All 21 million Bitcoin, that's the supply cap. All 21 million Bitcoin are there, and yours are on the blockchain along with everyone else's. It's a public ledger. And because it's a public ledger, you better lock those suckers up really well. But because it's a public ledger, everyone knows you're not screwing them over. And so what you are managing is the key to the lock that your Bitcoin are behind. And all of the different types of wallets are just different types of locks. Make sense so far? So a wallet actually is really just grouping of UTXOs. Who's heard that word? UTXO, okay. So this stands for unspent TX, we kind of fudge the letters, unspent transaction output. So every Bitcoin is a receipt of another Bitcoin transaction. It's the output of another. So the very first Bitcoin transaction and the very first UTXO was Satoshi's Bitcoin that he received from the initial Coinbase. So when you mine a block, you receive Bitcoin from the Coinbase, the initial circulation of Bitcoin. It's the protocol's issuance of the Bitcoin. Every single other Bitcoin and every other time is going to be an output of a previous input of a transaction. So every Bitcoin that you have in your wallet, think of them like little pieces of change, little coins and denominations. They're called unspent transaction outputs. If you had spent them, they wouldn't be in your wallet anymore. So who owns these Bitcoin? Hopefully you do. Hopefully you've got some. Whoever controls the private key controls the Bitcoin. So a custodial wallet, that means they control the private key. That's simple. It's not your Bitcoin, it's their Bitcoin. You have an IOU from the custodian to the Bitcoin. That's simple. I won't even elaborate any further. No more questions. Self-custody means you control the private key. That's it. You have it or you don't have it. If you have access to the Bitcoin unilaterally, you can go to the blockchain, as it's a peer-to-peer permissionless protocol, most important part, and access the coins. Nobody has to approve it except for you. And that's why they say, not your keys, not your coins. It really is that simple. So I will say it again. Should have self-custody. Part of the reason that people don't is because they're scared, because Bitcoin's valuable. And if you make a mistake, you will lose the Bitcoin in your self-custody, which is very upsetting. That's why the space exists. So we want to be a resource for you so that those things don't happen to you. Every person that loses Bitcoin is going to go tell everybody they know about the horrible experience they had with these crazy Bitcoin people. And that is going to not stop Bitcoin's success, but it might delay it a little bit. So I'll say self-custody isn't for everyone. If you are 95 years old and in your deathbed, you probably don't need self-custody at this point. But it's probably for you if you're here in this room and able-bodied. That said, even if you are in the hospital terminally ill, you might still want to consider self-custody. Public and private keys. So this is kind of digging in a little further. So wallets and addresses. So the way the whole Bitcoin blockchain works is it uses public-private key cryptography. The public key is what you essentially send to, and the private key allows you to send from. So there's different ways of generating keys. There's ECDSA, which is elliptical curved digital signature algorithm. I had to write that in the notes. And then there's Schnorr, which is fun to say and also pretty new. That's the algorithm that Taproot is using. And Hunter, if he was here, would tell you that Taproot is a weak algorithm and that Schnorr can be brute forced through quantum computers in the future. But there are other signature algorithms that will come about in the future to generate private keys, like Falcon or some others. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, come to the Space more, We have members who are working on saving Bitcoin from quantum computing before it even exists, so, or before it's a threat, an imminent threat, I should say. It already exists. So important thing to remember is that the addresses are derived. So the Bitcoin address, everybody's seen a Bitcoin address, right? Show of hands, you've all seen them? Okay, this isn't a test. You can say you've seen an address. So an address, you know, and we'll go through the formats, but basically an address is gonna be derived from a public key. And the public key is using asymmetric cryptography to be generated by the private key. So think like the private key is the physical key that goes into the public key, the keyhole. Make sense? It fits or it doesn't. And so the way that we're actually securing Bitcoin is you're sending Bitcoin to an address derived by a public key, which your private key has access to. And the way private keys work is they're basically such large numbers that there's no way that anybody else will ever be able to get that exact same key. The universe is likely to end first, except for quantum computing, which we'll talk about a little bit. But basically, the private keys are your proof to the whole world, to the Bitcoin blockchain, that you own the Bitcoin that are locked up inside that address. If you don't have the keys, I don't believe you. Take that, Craig Wright. So XPubs and XPRV, extended public and extended private keys. So you might have seen these. So the XPub is going to be all of the addresses in your wallet. So each time you receive Bitcoin, you should use a new address. That's because if you don't, you link your addresses on chain. So, you know, if Mark sends me Bitcoin to an address, and then Dylan sends me Bitcoin to that same address, and then Mark sees that address receive Bitcoin from two different places, he knows he can tie those two transactions together and knows that I received both of those. He doesn't necessarily know who sent it to me. This is bad for on-chain privacy. So Bitcoin's not private. It's pseudonymous, and we'll go through this. But so your extended public key contains each address that you would generate, all of the UTXOs that could be within your wallet. So your wallet's actually just really looking for the individual deposits, summing them up together, an abstraction, and that's your wallet balance. But there really is no wallet balance. There's just different amounts of Bitcoin on chain that you've got the key to. Different UTXOs. So for best practice, you want to use a watch-only wallet. So basically, if you have this thing called an XPub, you just paste it, and you won't be able to spend from it. So if someone's standing there like holding you at gunpoint, you can see all the Bitcoin in your wallet. You can generate receiving addresses, but you can't actually send from them because it doesn't contain the private key. So we'll talk about XPubs soon, but we'll talk about watch only in a little bit, but essentially, like, if you're gonna keep a mobile wallet, you should only use a watch only wallet. So don't keep your private key on your phone or somewhere where you could be forced to sign. Just keep the public key if you need access. And multi-sig wallets are a little different. They are comprised of multiple public keys. So I work for Casa where it's all we do is multi-sig wallets. And you'd be surprised how many times people are confused and intimidated by this concept of a multi-sig wallet, but it's really just building a wallet from multiple public keys instead of from one. And there's different ways that you can spend from the wallet in different configurations and get complicated, but really that's all that is just doing it more than one key. So there's something called an output descriptor, which is like your extended public key for a multi-sig wallet. So it says, what are all of the public keys that are involved in creating this wallet? And then you'll see your deposit addresses and history. So the seed phrase, the private key, right? So this is the most important part because it's your access to the Bitcoin blockchain. So the private key, again, not the public, but the private key is what you need to hold dearly. The seed phrase, is the seed phrase a private key? Yes or no? Nice, it's not. The seed phrase is a backup of your private key. It actually didn't exist when Bitcoin first started out either. So that's why a lot of Bitcoin were lost. Well, I think the next slide is the history of Bitcoin wallets. So The seed phrase is a 12 or 24 word, we call it the master private key. And this basically links to all of the wallets that you can possibly have. So if you have the seed phrase, not only do you have the private key, but you have all the possible private keys at all of the derivation paths. Hang tight, derivation paths are coming soon. So how is the seed phrase generated? Well, again, we're using either one of these algorithms and we're generating some kind of entropy. So we can flip a coin, we can roll dice, or we can just use some like cryptographically verified hardware that does it for us, and then it spits out words on a device and you write it down, and you all may be familiar with that one. But for a single key wallet, where we're generating a private key, generates a public key, which generates an address, and then you send Bitcoin to that address, the seed phrase over here funnels all the way up to that. So if you have the seed phrase, you have access to all the addresses within the wallet. There's different types of backups for seed phrases. Shamir secret sharing. This shards a private key into multiple pieces. Kind of complicated. I'd say you should probably just look at multisig instead, but I'm biased. There's different entropy types. Oh, actually, I already talked about that. There's cool things like border wallet seeds where there's all these novel different types of wallets. Like you can memorize a phrase in your head, which is a grid, and then you can walk across it. And if the border agent stops you, all they find is the grid, not the actual wallet itself. So talk to me about that after if you want to learn more about that. One of the coolest projects in Bitcoin, I think. But if you remember anything about this, don't lose the seed phrase, don't screenshot it, and do not split it up. Don't split it up. You're just increasing the likelihood that you're going to lose it. If you lose either half, you've lost it. So over time, like I said, wallets were harder. They're getting easier. Beginning wallets were wallet.dat. Did anyone have a wallet.dat like old Bitcoin QT? No? Just me? Okay. Shit. I shouldn't have raised my hand, you're right. So Bitcoin QT was like a wallet you could download on your computer, and I don't even feel comfortable talking about this anymore now. Basically, you had a file, a wallet.dat file, and if you lost this file, that was it. It was over. So there was a reason why millions of Bitcoin are lost. And then paper wallets came about pretty soon after. You could write the seed phrase down with a piece of paper, and they had generated online, and a lot of Bitcoin were lost too because it's easy to lose a piece of paper. Then mobile wallets started to come out, and they had accounts that you could log into, like Coinbase, where they would actually, or I guess Coinbase started out as a custodian. I want to say Coinbase started out as like a self-custody wallet, but maybe I'm wrong on that. But there were other like MyEtherWallet was one where you could basically like log into a web browser, make a username and password, and you could save that. So if you forgot the piece of paper, it would save your private key in your username and password in your account. And then hardware wallets came about, and that's kind of when Bitcoin started getting mainstream, or it's really still not mainstream, but the first hardware wallet came out, Trezor, Ledger, Cold Card, the Bitcoins, the ones that the Bitcoin maxis love now. And then collaborative custody and multisig started coming about in the late 2010s. Casa, Unchained, Sparrow Wallet came out, I think in 2021. And then we've got like the cutting edge stuff now, which is like Taproot, Miniscript with Liana, Anchor Watch is doing some really cool stuff with them too. So yeah, Bitcoin is still evolving. It's not set in stone. The only thing that's set in stone is 21 million. There's different address types. If you've used the Bitcoin blockchain, or if you've sent Bitcoin before, you probably notice. Well, you maybe never seen a 1 address if you're fairly new, but if you maybe you've seen them. 3s are a little more common. These are pay-to-script hash. These are typically in multi-sig wallets, so you can build a multi-sig wallet with a native SegWit too. And then the more modern versions, there's the native SegWit. You may have heard of SegWit. It was a soft fork, and it was pretty contentious, but it went through. And those have lower fees. So if you see this like BC1 address, that's SegWit. This BC1Q is SegWit, and BC1P is Taproot. Taproot's not widely implemented yet, which is a shame because it's been 4 years in the code. 15 minutes left. Or
Halfway. If you want 30 minutes. It's been 15 minutes.
It's been 15. Okay, that's good. I'm about halfway through the presentation. So let's see, what else? BIPs, Bitcoin Improvement Proposal. So to illustrate this wallet evolution over time, there was a lot of different things that have happened, and there's a lot of new BIPs that are coming out. Hunter's is BIP 360, which is the quantum resistant format. He's a member of Space. A lot of cool stuff happening here. You should join. Chairman duties, you know. So mnemonic words, those didn't exist. That was a BIP. HD wallets, the hierarchical deterministic, so the master private key that funnels down to others, that didn't exist in the beginning. Multi-account structures has to do with HD wallets. Nested SegWit, native SegWit, Taproot, these are all address types. And you can actually see these address types in the the wallet script, you'll see. So HD wallets, this was a big leap forward for Bitcoin wallets, because no longer did you have to manage an individual public and private key, a chain. Like imagine like if you have a Bitcoin, each Bitcoin address has its own private key. That's why you manage the extended private key, this master private key. But imagine like in the beginning where you basically have like a keychain of like thousands of keys, because each address has its own key. So eventually they were like, well, this is a problem because that's a lot to keep track of and humans make mistakes. Well, we created this I wasn't a part of it, but the community created HD wallets, which takes a single seed phrase, that mnemonic phrase, and funnels it down into multiple child keys. And they're at these things called derivation paths. So you have this master private key, and then you go to a specific derivation path, and you'll find the individual private key. Because Mark, can you let him in the back there? And then what you'll see, this here is an example of a derivation path. Is that, who's never seen this before? A derivation path. Sweet, okay. All right, well, we're gonna learn something new then. So, because Bitcoin's evolving and it's trying to get easier to use, the derivation paths and these HD wallets are used to manage multiple wallets or manage multiple accounts. Because you don't want to ever tie your wallet on chain, you want to be private and always not reuse addresses, and you don't want to combine UTXOs on chain, you should use different wallets. So this, I hope, I mean, it's kind of a lot on the screen, but hopefully this will demystify, and this presentation is in that app. So just to remind you, if you go to 8UGAI, you can actually follow along with the slides and you can ask questions and we'll go through that. But if you want to zoom in on this, like you can see it on your phone. So you have the derivation path, or the master key here in the beginning, and then you have the coin purpose. And so this right here, 44, is going to be the legacy type. So you can actually tell like what type of address format in your derivation path your wallet is. So if the first number is 44, that's a legacy. If it's a 49, that's a nested SegWit. If it's a 84, that's a native SegWit. And if it's an 85, that's Taproot. So it's important to make note of which derivation path you created your wallet with, because if you have your seed phrase but you don't know the derivation path, you will not find your Bitcoin. Gosh, this is complicated, right? That's okay. There's a lot of smart people that are here at the space that are here to help. So this basically, you don't need to memorize this, but what you should really know is that each of these funnels down further into more specific, and the final one is going to actually be your address. So if you see this last one, this will increment. The first address in your wallet will be 0. The next address will be 1. The second address will be, the third address will be 2, and so forth. And you can actually figure out, so this is called an address index. So I could say in my master seed phrase at BIP44 on Bitcoin mainnet, in my first account, at the first address, I have 0 Bitcoin because I'm broke. So you can verify all the way down exactly which address. And this is actually what your wallet software is doing. It's not magic, although it feels like it. This is a little more magic. We're going to try to tackle this transaction hex. It's kind of like a spell. I think that's why they call it that. So this is Bitcoin, y'all. This is like the most basic first principles. This is your closest thing to Bitcoin. That's it. You could print it out, frame it on your wall, because that's a transaction hex, and that is everything you need to see. So we've got the version number. So that's here, and it's color-coded, so this makes it easy. So we have the version number, the number of inputs, the previous transaction ID that it's spending from in yellow, the output number in that previous address. So let's say you withdraw from an exchange and they send to 10 different addresses at once. Which one in the previous transaction was yours? The size of the script, the actual signature. I forget what the sequence number even is, y'all. And then you've got all these things about the outputs, where it's being sent to. So the number of outputs, the amount of the output, which is in hexadecimal, the size of the locking script output, the amount again, and then I don't exactly know what those are, and then the lock time, if there is one or not. So this is like all of the features of your address basically compacted into one data, and this is what the blockchain is looking at to say, can you spend from these or not, basically? Is this a valid Bitcoin transaction? So your wallet is just like taking this mumbo jumbo and turning it into something that you can understand. And so, you know, you don't have to ever know that, but it's important to understand that transaction hexes are like what you search for. It's how you find your Bitcoin. It's how you link to your any transaction you've ever done. And you can broadcast it offline in a truly sovereign way. You could literally copy that hex, go to mempool.space, and broadcast that exact string. And that's how you can send a Bitcoin transaction. So a lot of people don't know that. Speaking of sending, whole nother world. How do you do that? Who has never sent a Bitcoin transaction? It's okay, you're not on camera, so. Well, we're gonna send tonight, so you will, everyone will have sent by the end of the night. So if you've ever sent at a low fee, you're like me, I'm trying to save every sat I can. I don't wanna spend more sats and fees than I have to. But sometimes if you lowball it, you'll get it stuck. And that's a problem, because eventually it might be stuck forever. I mean, technically it'll fall out of the mempool or your mempool, and then you could be able to rebroadcast it. But let's just say you don't want your Bitcoin transaction stuck, or you're going to be confused or inconvenienced, or both. So I don't remember exactly what year it was, but RBF is a flag that you can select in your wallet. If you have a good wallet, it'll let you select it, or they'll just automatically select it by default. That's probably preferred. So if you send it too low, you can resend it again. All right, it's like buying a bus ticket for $5, and then people come right behind you and buy tickets for $6, $7, $8, $9, $10, and the bus driver says, sorry, you're on the next bus. But then the more people come, and they go, sorry, you're on the next bus, and then you're like, well, I just gotta get there. All right, fine, here, I'll pay $15 for a ticket. That's RBF. You're changing your fee that you're paying. It replaces the fee. So if you got stuck transactions, or you have really time-sensitive payments you have to confirm now, but just like pay a competitive fee, you know, don't cheap out. Miners need you. You know, RBF is useful, but there's some controversy. You know, people accept zero confirmation payments that are still pending. They could be double spent. So we won't get into too much. That's a little beyond the scope here, but just know that you should be cautious. If you do receive an RBF payment from someone, don't give them something physical in return until there's a confirmation. Otherwise, they could, like, I give you a pizza, and then you quickly RBF the transaction back to yourself. So you spend the wallet, you change where you're gonna spend it back to your own address at a higher transaction fee, and the miners say, oh, I'll just take that one instead, which invalidates it, and now I just got my Bitcoin rugged from me. So don't ever sell something with a zero conf if RBF's flagged, unless you really trust that person. If in the space, be fine. Because we're in meat space here, so. CPFP is another way to do it. So this is if you're on the recipient side instead of the sending side, you can kind of like speed up the transaction on the other end. So if I'm the recipient, and let's say Joey was being a cheapskate because he's trying to save Bitcoin, And he sent me a transaction at 1 sat per byte, but it was 10 Bitcoin. Dang, Joe, you've been stacking. And I was like, dude, I really need this 10 Bitcoin right now. So I go and I pay 50 sats per byte, and I pay his fee, kind of like adding a tip on top of it. So it's useful if you don't flag RBF in the beginning, because if you don't flag RBF, you can't go back later and do it. So that's why I said you should always just like default flag it, in my opinion. So if you don't RBF, that's basically your only option. Miners will confirm both transactions. You're going to pay higher fees, but better than get stuck. Speaking of stuck, time-locked transactions. There's a flow to this presentation. By the way, if you have questions throughout this, we're going to go through a whole hour of Q&A, security, best practices, presentation's almost over. Just enter them in the thing there, and then we'll go through them before you forget them afterward. It's time-locked transactions, so you can set a lock time on a block on a transaction. So where I say it was actually, if you go back 3 right here, the last thing, lock time. So you can flag it, and let's say in a Lightning wallet, you basically are creating a payment channel with another person. There's some trust involved, and so you set up, hey, these sats cannot be spent before this block height. So you're adding an additional constraint to the ability to spend from the wallet. So not only does it have to meet all of these other criteria, but it's also got to be this block height or later. Miniscript does a lot of things like that too, and I think this is really an exciting concept for Bitcoin wallets and self-custody, because it's going to allow you to do things like degrading multi-sigs and just all kinds of stuff that the creative people that work on this protocol, just like Lego blocks is really what I think of it as. We talked about the transaction hex already. We don't need to go into that again, but you'll see that lock time there. Yeah, payment channels, contracts, scripts, and degrading multi-sig. So imagine a wallet where, let's say there's 3 keys that created it, and for the first year, you have to have 2 of those 3 keys, but you lost 2. So in a normal wallet today, that's it. Because you need 2 to spend, you would be unable to spend. But things like Miniscript, you could pre-program an alternate spending path later. So after X amount of years, only 1 key would be needed. But before that time period, 2 would be needed. So you could do some really cool things with inheritance and other transfers like that, contracts, et cetera. So this is ultimately just programmable money. Let's not forget that, right? Bitcoin's a lot of things to a lot of different people, but it is just at the core of it programmable money. So different types of wallets. You've got your hot wallet, your cold wallet. I don't know who came up with these names, y'all, but hot wallet is always connected to the internet. If it's on your phone's connected to the internet. It's on the Spaces Wi-Fi. We've got all your data. If you've got a cold wallet, it's an offline dedicated storage tool. So a Ledger or Trezor, we referenced those a few slides ago. The reason why this is important is pretty simple. Because your Bitcoin private key is the key to all of the wealth that you have stored on the Bitcoin blockchain publicly, you need to keep it secure. And because it's just a piece of data, a long string of numbers and letters, if someone were to get it digitally, they could take everything you have while you're sleeping in a second. So if it's a large amount of Bitcoin, keeping that piece of data in an offline device that's never been connected to the internet and never will be is a wise thing to do so that you don't expose yourself to those digital attacks. That doesn't mean you're safe, though. Does not mean you're safe, but it means you're safe from that part. Inside these hardware devices, there are things called secure elements. Sounds fancy. It's just a part of your device that's built for storing cryptographic secrets. Your phone has one. People don't like phones as wallets because they're connected to the internet. But from a hardware standpoint, they're actually pretty damn good. If you've ever signed a really large transaction with a lot of inputs and outputs from a cold card, or you signed it with a Pixel 9, huge difference in performance. we have supercomputers in our pockets. The reason why we need these hardware devices is because they're connected to the internet. We'll talk about how you can mitigate that through multisig, but these hardware devices are so much better than a single key hotkey on your phone. And that's so much better than keeping your funds on the exchange, because if you have Bitcoin on an exchange, you don't have Bitcoin. Coinbase has your Bitcoin. It's not yours. But they have problems, right? And that's why I think truly mobile phones are going to be the future of Bitcoin storage. Put me on blast, fine. I'm just going to stick to it. Because you got to deal with things like firmware updates and the little screens, and I've been working with these devices for years and years and years, and it's the #1 friction point for people successfully self-custodying. But I will say they are required today. You have to have it. Doesn't matter, even if you're doing multi-sig, you got to have your keys offline. They cannot be internet connected. Too many cyber attacks. Most of you probably don't know a darn thing about cybersecurity more than like the average person. You have to use cold storage, hard stop, unless it's like 500 bucks. If you have less Bitcoin than the phone is worth, fine to use a hot wallet. Buy more Bitcoin instead. Don't buy a hardware device. But we're always going to have risks with self-custody. Doesn't matter whether it's a remote attack, SIM swap, phishing, physical attack. Risks everywhere. People clone devices, people socially engineer, people send them Bitcoin. You send me one, I'll send you 2 back. So stay vigilant, y'all. Stay vigilant. It's scary out there, not to scare you, but the attacks are becoming more common. I worry about that sometimes in this physical venue, if I'm being honest. But at the same time, I think that the good that we can do from empowering, educating people about this stuff way outweighs the risks. But there are always trade-offs, always. Running an event, a venue like this included. So let's talk about multi-sig wallets. This is a little more advanced. So if you've graduated from a single wallet, let's say you have a lot of Bitcoin, like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars would be I would consider that a lot of Bitcoin. You probably want to look at a multi-sig wallet. The reason being that shit happens. That's it. You can lose that key. All these things, like offline, got the words in the safe, you put them in steel and you bury it underground, but you can lose it. Or more than likely, somebody will find it. Because it's just words, the mnemonic phrase. So there is what's called a single point of failure in all single key wallets. It doesn't matter whether it's a hot wallet, a cold wallet, a brain wallet, a border wallet. They all have a single point of failure, the single private key. If you get it, that's it. You got everything. So pragmatic people who are self-aware say, hey, I lose keys. I make mistakes. I don't want to lose my life savings because I make a single mistake. Well, or whatever amount of your savings you have in Bitcoin. And if it's not your life savings, it probably will be eventually because it's going to go up so much. So it's going to be the majority of it. So there's different types of multi-sigs that you can create. The most basic one that you'll see is 2 of 3. That means that 3 public keys, like 3 keyholes, think of it like keyholes in a safety deposit box building. There's 3 keyholes on that lock, and you need to put 2 keys in it to open it, not 1. If you have 1, you have nothing, because this lock is more redundant. So you're putting multiple keys and locking your Bitcoin up with multiple keys, so that if you lose a key, you don't lose your Bitcoin. Much easier to do that. Most people can not lose a lot of different things at the same time, right? Like, especially if you put these keys in different places. So let's say you have 3 of 5, for example. If you have 5 different keys in 5 different places on Earth, and you only need 3 of them, it's going to be very, very hard to lose 3 at the same time. Because a lot of things got to go wrong. The only way you're really going to do that is by intentionally losing your Bitcoin. Because these exist physically by nature only. So if you've got 1 in Denver, 1 in Canada, and 1 in Hawaii, pretty tough for an attacker, whether it be digital, physical, or even government by nature, to actually get your Bitcoin. So there are better ways, although multi-sig isn't necessarily right for everyone, there are better ways to do it, and there's a right time to do it. There's a right case to do it. Most of those are, you have a lot, and the consequence of a mistake is catastrophic. That's gonna be for anyone. The other would be families, husband and wife, children, businesses. We run a multi-sig here at the space. We manage a multi-sig treasury so that I, as chairman of the board, cannot send our entire treasury to my own personal Bitcoin wallet. Believe me, I've tried. I didn't try, y'all, come on. Please donate. We're good steward of funds. We're great steward of your funds. In fact, all of it's transparent. We have a live treasury dashboard on our website where you can see in real time funds movement. If we spend the Bitcoin out of the wallet, it immediately updates on chain. But a good reason to do this would be for businesses like the space. So we are a Bitcoin organization. We care about Bitcoin. We also know fiat sucks from a purchasing power standpoint. So we hold a Bitcoin treasury, and multiple of the board members have to work together to be able to spend from this wallet. So I have a private key, other board members have a private key, and the only way to get money out is for us to collaborate. So this is a really strong way to take the, hey, I trust you, to I like you, but I don't need to trust you. Question?
So do you see using multi-sig wallets do you encounter people who have just a single wallet, but maybe they spend or transact from more regularly, and then more like long-term savings would go in the multi-sig vault?
Yep.
Something like that? Okay.
Exactly. And that's a couple slides from now. So great question. A couple other things. These are more just kind of like, I didn't know where to group them up, but I wanted to talk about them. So on-chain privacy. So we talked about not reusing addresses. CoinJoin or Whirlpool, these are things that can break your deterministic link on the blockchain. It's basically like putting your cash in a laundry machine with everybody else's cash, and you get your amount out, but nobody knows which dollars were yours and whose were what. So pretty sure the Samurai guys are like they're in trouble with the feds. They got shut down. Wasabi, they're kind of in hot water. Privacy is a human right, in my opinion. I think these tools should be fundamental to everyone's Bitcoin arsenal toolkit, but they're contentious. Just know that. If you mix coins, you send it to an exchange, they may not accept it, or they may send it back to you, or they may just keep it. I don't know. That's why you shouldn't send your coins to an exchange. If it's not in your wallet, it's not your Bitcoin. But yeah, if you got to be mindful of what they call doxic change. So if you run your Bitcoin through these mixing rounds, you'll get incremental flat amounts. The amount in excess of that will be siphoned off as what's called doxic change. Do not ever combine that. Otherwise, you just completely defeated the point of what you were doing, because you now relinked it after you unlinked it. So also pretty complicated to know some stuff like this. So, not to discourage you, right? But there is like an evolution. Just know that you haven't hit the end of the rabbit hole. And nor have I. Layer 2s. So we've been talking about on-chain Bitcoin layer 1 so far. Layer 2s are a novel way, or another way of moving Bitcoin. There are many novel ways of doing it. There are a sliding scale of some layer 2s are more custodial than others. Some are more trustworthy than others. Some are non-custodial. Lightning's going to be the biggest one you probably all heard of. Most of our members pay dues in Lightning. There are some EVM-based L2s, like Wrapped Bitcoin, that basically put Bitcoin in a smart contract. They hold it in a custodian, and then they issue it on Ethereum. Fedimint and Cashew are really I kind of call them layer 3s in a way, because they're like sit on top of Lightning. But these are some things that can allow you to move Bitcoin instantly and for no cost. So you're not actually moving Bitcoin on the blockchain. It's like on a higher layer that kind of sinks down to the blockchain every once in a while. So we won't get too deep into this, but quick plug, next month's intermediate series is on Lightning wallets. So come back, and we will go through all of that. Let's see. There are different L2s though. A lot. I mean, it's probably the biggest narrative right now in Bitcoin is Bitcoin layer 2s. Lightning was kind of the only thing in town for a while, but now we've got all of these like roll-ups and Ethereum-based projects. So the space is going to be hosting during ETH Denver. Like this neighborhood is just taken over by buffalo corns or whatever they're called, and we're going to be hosting Bitcoin-focused events during ETH Denver about Bitcoin layer 2s. Hopefully that's like enough in their interest to like convert them to Bitcoin before it's too late. For them, not for us, but we're gonna be fine. So let's go through a couple different just like security. This is like what I really like talking about, and hopefully these last couple slides here will get the juices flowing for Q&A and the security session. We'll take like a 5 or 10 minute break in between this just so I can get something else to drink and have time to kind of process things. But number one thing here is that, the attackers aren't going to break Bitcoin. They're going to break you somehow, whether it's your mistake, your lack of knowledge. Somehow, they will break you. Bitcoin's never been hacked. That's why people secure trillions of dollars in it. Beautiful. They exploit your mistakes, whether it's social by nature, social engineering, technical by nature, phishing, physical by nature. They're breaking in your freaking house, cutting your finger off and sending it for ransom. Got escalated quickly. There's no in between. It's always a human mistake that winds up being lost Bitcoin. Lost seed phrase. So this is why multisig is so great, because it prevents you from a single mistake resulting in lost Bitcoin. You can still lose it. But usually people don't make multiple mistakes at the same time, or it's a real bad day. Phishing attempts are big though. So, you're gonna get tons of emails from Zach at the space. I don't want your Bitcoin. And I'm not gonna ask you to download we were gonna download a wallet later, so. But watch out for the fake wallets, verify them, especially if you're doing any mainnet. There's things out there. I mean, the attacks are getting sophisticated. Keyloggers, clipboard, hijackers, things that will replace the address that you copied and pasted right before you send, so you don't even realize. There are more sophisticated attacks than I'm aware of, too. So there's probably some out there that we're all subject to, and that's the thing. It's always cat and mouse. So this is, again, why having like, incremental redundancies in place, like through multisig or something, is just going to buy you time, going to buy you room for error. But yeah, SIM swaps, again, don't use hot wallets, pretty obvious. Also don't use text-based SMS ever, because that is really bad. And the number one thing people do though is they call you, they pretend you're Coinbase, they pretend you're Zach Acosta, they pretend you're Zach at the space or whoever. It's your family member, the deep fakes, they got, AI is pretty good now and it's only getting better. And they just convince you to send them your Bitcoin. Oh no, why did you do that? Nobody can help you. There is literally nothing anyone can do. Helpless, heartbreaking. Every time I hear a story like that, it just really fires me up to do a workshop like this, because I don't want anybody to lose Bitcoin that I've ever talked to, but it happens. So let's see, what else? Mitigations, how to prevent it. So we talked about this a little bit already. Use cold storage devices. Also air gapped, so you can sign with the camera if your device has a camera, or NFC. And this can be a better way of doing it than plugging it in, because what if the cable is faulty? You never know. What if the USB port is faulty? There's so many things you got to think about. It's crazy. Or you just use multisig so that you have to have multiple of these things go wrong at the same time. Other things you could do, verify the URLs. Anything in the browser, like if it looks like a funky URL, just don't, it's pretty obvious usually. Verify the source code. That's a little more advanced, but it's not too hard to do SHA-SUM 256-A and then put the name of the download and it'll give you the output. So you can verify it against the developer and you can make sure you have the exact code that the developer pushed to GitHub or wherever. Use physical security keys, said that already. Don't use SMS, they're the worst. Don't use Authy, Google Authenticator, any of those things, they're the worst. they could be phished, they could be man-in-the-middle attacked. If you have a physical security key, it's like a hardware wallet for your two-factor codes. Remember that. They're $20. You can get them at Best Buy, YubiKey. What happens if you lose your key? Well, if you've backed up the seed phrase, no problem. You can take that seed phrase, type it into a new hardware device or into a new software wallet, but don't do that because then it's a hot wallet. So you would buy a new hardware device, which is basically just a shell that holds the data of the private key securely in that secure element. Remember a couple slides ago, secure element? So this device's whole purpose is to securely store that piece of data. And so you would just get a new shell and type that piece of data in the new shell, and you would have it in that instead. So earlier said this, even if you have your seed phrase, you need to make sure that you know the derivation path. Because if you are recovering a BIP44 wallet with that seed phrase and you think, the software is a BIP84, you're gonna see a zero balance and you're gonna think you lost it all. Oh no. Also passphrases. This is a big one where I'm just like, why? So mnemonic phrases are, I think it's like 2,048 possible words, but it's also 12 or 24 words, so it's like basically can't ever guess it. But a passphrase is on top of that. So people want to do this as a way of not doing multi-sig. So instead of building a wallet from multiple keys, they say, well, I'll have a seed phrase and I'll add another extra word on top of that seed phrase, which completely makes it a totally different wallet. And then that's gonna be my wallet. So if someone finds my seed phrase, they enter it in, they get 0 Bitcoin because that wallet that has the seed phrase has nothing on it. But you take that wallet and you add the extra word, whether it's blue or rabbit or the space or your name or your birthday or a bunch of random characters. It literally can be anything. That's your wallet now. And guess what? People forget that extra thing that they added all the frickin' time. Number one way I see people lose Bitcoin is passphrases over and over again. I'm like, why did you do that? So don't do it. In my opinion, just don't do passphrases. Do a multi-sig instead. This is not me pushing Casa. Do Sparrow, it's free. Just don't do a passphrase. Also, if you die tomorrow and you didn't tell your spouse or someone else the passphrase, because again, it could be anything, literally anything, they can't get it, even if they got your seed phrase. So don't shoot yourself in the foot while you still have them. Other mistakes is not having the output descriptor. So in a multi-sig wallet, if you don't have the list of all of the keys, you've lost your Bitcoin, even if you got all the majority of the private keys. So let's say in that setup, we have a 2 of 3. So there's a wallet constructed from 3 public keys that requires 2 of those 3 private keys that correspond to them to open it. Well, if you have 2 private keys, but you've lost one of the public keys, you've now lost your Bitcoin. Oh God, this is so complicated. Let's go send our Bitcoin back to Coinbase. But there's a better way to do it. You can print it out as a QR code. You can make a bunch of copies of it, but you cannot lose the output descriptor. That's it, it's over. And we'll go through those in a bit when we do the workshop, but basically just remember to back that up, super important. Wallet recovery. So if you do lose your key, you want to make sure you import it into a factory sealed brand new device. If it's not factory sealed, there's a chance that that hardware device has been under someone else's control, and therefore the second you type that hardware device, the seed phrase in, it might be gone. Unlikely. Honestly, I've never seen that actually happen in my years of working in the industry, but I wouldn't test it. Also, we talked about this earlier though, check balances with a watch-only wallet. So you don't need your seed phrase in your wallet to receive Bitcoin. And all you psychos, nobody's spending Bitcoin. You're just receiving it. So you don't even need to put yourself in jeopardy. So don't rely on your memory. It sucks. It's gonna get worse. Brain wallets are really bad. I also forget where keys are all the time. It's complicated. Don't overcomplicate this stuff for yourself. Check on it occasionally. Practice your PIN code. Just like plug the device in, make sure it powers on, type your PIN code in, jog your memory, and then go put it up. Just like do these things. Preventative maintenance. You know, if you wouldn't like drive your car for 50,000 miles without changing your oil, you shouldn't wait 5 years before checking on your key. It might not be there, or you might have forgot it. Like, it's just like our brains are so bad. They're great, but they're really bad. They're bad at remembering Bitcoin things, specifically. So a couple best practices. Bitcoin is pseudonymous. Again, it's not private. There's no privacy in Bitcoin. If you send Bitcoin, I can see it right now. I can see exactly how much you sent. If I knew the address, the transaction hex, anything that tied you to it. That's why I mean it's pseudonymous. So it's anonymous if you keep your identity on chain separate from your real world identity. So if you reuse your address, you're going to hurt that ability. Because if Mark and Dylan talk and they say, wait a second, I also sent Bitcoin to another address. Now they can link that to me. And then they can follow where that address goes. And they can see all the transactions in the future, too. So it's not private at all. But that's why you always generate a new address, every single time. And coin control matters. In the very beginning, I said it was a coin control maximalist. That's selecting your individual UTXOs to spend from when you construct a transaction. So if you receive 0.1, 0.2, 0.1, you would have 3 UTXOs in your wallet worth 0.4 in total. If somebody wants 0.05, well, you can send from any of those 3 UTXOs to actually complete that transaction. And so you can choose which one you want to do it from. So I would do it from the lowest value one so that the person I'm sending it to doesn't know I have this amount. They only know I have this amount. Because it's impossible when you transact with someone in Bitcoin to keep that part anonymous. Anytime you transact with someone, they're going to know the balance of the address that you sent it from. It's just impossible to avoid that. But you can't avoid combining UTXOs to not reveal more information than you need to. So that was privacy best practices. Security, back seed phrase up offline, back it up, back it up, back it up. Passphrase for extra protection, bad idea. Don't do it, but you can. Just don't. Single sig only for sure. If you are going to do a passphrase, don't do it with a multi-sig. You're asking to lose your Bitcoin. You're just asking for it. You got all the keys, everything, but there's a passphrase on one key. It's over. It's gone. Watch out for fake apps, fake phishing attempts. We already talked about that a little. Keep your firmware up to date. Use multi-sig where it's appropriate. So your question, Audrey, about you should have different wallets for different purposes. You absolutely should. You should have a hot wallet for going to El Salvador, and it should have $200 in it. You should have a 2 of 3 multi-sig that if you want to sell some Bitcoin this cycle, you're not going to time it well, but if you want to try, maybe you can access some of that at home on a moment's notice, because you know how quickly it can get up and down. But most of it, let's say you got a savings account, maybe you keep that in a bigger multi-sig, in a 3 of 5 or something like that. But really, you know, a seed phrase is not an inheritance plan. So that is a single point of failure. So talk to Casa. I run the sales team at Casa. I'm happy to help you. So last couple points. So we're going to review the main point. Bitcoin are on the blockchain. They're not in your wallet. And you manage keys, not Bitcoin. Bitcoin's blockchain manages those for you, the Bitcoins. So manage your keys like a vault. It's the most important thing. It's everything for you. If you lose it or you don't care or you're careless, you will feel the effects of lost Bitcoin, and it will hurt more and more and more over time. And it'll also hurt those around you because you will have lost confidence in Bitcoin, which will directly impact the ones that you care about most, who should really be the ones that need Bitcoin. So understand your address types. Again, beat that into a pulp at this point. Know your derivation paths. Know the type of wallet format you created. Don't overcomplicate it. Just like do it correctly. It seems really easy, right? Layers, 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 redundancy. Think like a Navy. You don't, a single hole does not let the whole ship flood. Right? I'm looking at my Navy man here. Pick the right wallet type for the right purpose. So again, checking, savings, cash in your pocket. Lightning wallets are good for spending quickly and immediately, but you don't want to keep a large balance in there, or a hot wallet. And rule number 1, don't talk about your Bitcoin. I have grossly violated that here tonight. Thank you. We're at 7:45. We'll go till about 8:30 unless we run out of questions before then. And then 8:30 to 9, we'll do a Sparrow and Casa demo. So send your testnet Bitcoin, download the app, send it back, or you can keep it if you don't want to practice sending Bitcoin, but it's testnet, so there's no point in keeping it. Let's go through the Q&A. So I'm going to start with the most upvoted ones. And we'll go from there. Thanks for hosting this session. Awesome. The space is awesome. That was the most upvoted. So let's go, Zach. Thanks for the event. Classic Joey. What's the timeline look for Falcon encryption? Great question for Hunter. So probably a few years, I would say. Probably less than that if you ask Hunter. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's amazing that we're already working on quantum-resistant address formats. And the fact that it's coming out of the space where that is happening is an amazing feat and adds some serious credibility to our venue. Hopefully before it's a problem would be the short answer. Satoshi's coins will be at risk first. Hunter and Jeff is somewhere, and he was here. Jeff works with him on that, and they have a canary called Gabriel that will alert the whole world if Satoshi's coins move. So hopefully we never see that happen, but we probably will at some point. So no Bitcoin are lost forever, just long enough that we're probably not going to get them. What's a reasonable transaction fee? How much to send one Bitcoin? Oh my God, one Bitcoin. How much to send one Bitcoin today seems reasonable? Well, it depends on the mempool. So there's this thing called the mempool. Well, it's really your mempool or multiple people's mempools. Every full node has a mempool that when it receives transactions that are broadcasted to it, it then gossips them to the other full nodes. And so the fee rate you pay depends on what everybody else is paying at that moment. Right now, it's the lowest it can possibly be. It's 1 sat, 1 Satoshi per byte, per V-byte, virtual byte, which is a SegWit thing. Don't ask me about that, I'm not sure. So it's very low. I mean, you could literally send 0.00001 Bitcoin or 100,000 Bitcoin for the exact same fee. Yeah.
For questions, we'll have a mic here.
Yeah, just so we can record them for the stream.
Thank you.
Different question now. I'm guessing for multi-sign wallet, you would pay a fee to the person or the organization that's helping you out. When would you say it's a good amount of Bitcoin to start a multi-sig?
So you don't have to pay any fee to do a multi-sig. It's open source, just like all of the Bitcoin wallets are. Most of the time, people don't do multi-sig on their own and hire a service like Casa or Unchained or Nunchuck or Thea. I mean, there's so many of them to help them because it's a bit complicated. And like I said, if you lose the output descriptor, it's over, even if you have the majority of the private keys. I would say when you have enough Bitcoin that if you make a mistake, it's going to haunt you for the rest of your life, that'd be a good time to start looking at a multi-sig, for sure. Maybe before that. But I would say, generally speaking, like if you have 1 Bitcoin, you should be looking at a multi-sig. That's $100,000. Do you really want to lose $100,000, which is going to be worth a lot more in the future from a single mistake? That's devastating. So that'd be my answer. Let's see. We got some other questions here. Will mempool clear tonight? I don't know. It might. There were only 12 blocks in the queue. which is very unusual for that. So I doubt it, because the second 1 sat per byte hits, all the ordinals people start spamming the chain with their graffiti. What can Miniscript or time locks provide in terms of inheritance or estate planning? So the main concept that I understand is this degrading multisig, where let's say you have your normal wallet setup is a 2 of 3 multisig, where there's 3 physical keys. In order to spend from the wallet, you need 2 of them, any 2. Well, if you lose 2, that means you only have 1 left, which means you can never unlock the wallet. Now, if you'd have lost 1 in a single key, you already would have lost your Bitcoin. So it's still going to afford you more redundancy, but let's say you had lost 2. Well, maybe it was through an inheritance transfer. You had this 2 of 3 setup, but you didn't tell your kid the PIN code, and they can't figure it out. And they're like digging through your safe, and they finally get it, and it wipes. Well, a degrading multisig with Miniscript could allow for you to pre-specify, and all of this has to be decided before you send the Bitcoin to it, because the entire security model of your Bitcoin is based on the address itself. So you have to create this Miniscript alternate address, alternate spending path at the very inception. But this would allow you to basically, let's turn it into a 1 of 3 multisig, or turn it into any combination. So you could have, a 2 of 3 multisig where keys A, B, and C create it, and any of those 2 keys can unlock it. But after a allotted amount of time, key D can unlock the wallet, and only key D. Has nothing to do with A, B, or C, and you give that key D to your estate planner. And if you haven't died and a certain block height hasn't hit, that estate planner cannot spend. But the second that block height hits, they can from just that key. It's an alternate spending condition. So that would be a really useful way to do this. It's all things, there's trade-offs. Right now, you've got to refresh them once a year. So if you were to lock up your Bitcoin in this structure that I'm telling you about, every single year you're going to have to respend and refresh that Miniscript. Otherwise, the alternate spending path's going to take over. So it comes with trade-offs. You can't just set it up once, wait 10 years, because this alternate spending path will have taken effect a long time ago. It's getting there, but it's a pretty new type of wallet script. Could you explain, what is your prediction for Bitcoin growth? What? I'm not up. This is the year. This is the bull year. Could you explain the best way to separate a multisig with 3 keys, including the 3 hardware devices and 3 seed phrases? Great question. So with a multisig, the security model is a bit different. So the seed phrase is no longer a single point of failure, so you don't have to be quite so paranoid about it, though it's still really important. It's one of your keys, or a backup to one of your keys. And so with a multisig, let's say in a 2 of 3, if you were to build this yourself, you would have 3 keys in 3 different physical locations. If you didn't, then you would have 2 keys in 1 location, which means that you have a single point of failure again, which means why did you even do this? So geographically distributed multisig is really where you're going to mitigate physical threats. A multisig in itself will mitigate single point of failure from the seed phrase, the digital threats, but not from things like a fire or a theft. So when you create a 2 of 3 like this, you want to put the seed phrase with the hardware device itself, because it's the exact same thing. And the hardware distribution is what really you're getting your security model from, not from the seed phrase or the hardware secure element. Because if you get any one piece of data, it's useless to you. You need multiple pieces of data. So if you have a 2 of 3 multisig and you put 1 key in your bathroom, 1 key in your living room, and 1 key in your garage, I guess that's better, but it's really not that great. But if you put 1 key at your home, you give 1 key to your adult children who live out of state, and you ship 1 key to your estate planner, now that's a pretty strong model for security. Unlikely you're going to lose multiple of those keys at the exact same time, and the backup of those keys. So you have when you store seed phrases, you want to know that they've not been viewed. And that's why seed phrases are so scary, because unlike a cold storage hardware device that's offline meaning that the only way you can get the key is to physically have it in your hands. You have to be in somewhere on Earth with it. It's the only place that data exists, is in that location on that physical device. However, with the seed phrase, you can take a picture of it. And with a picture, it can be anywhere in the world instantly because it's digital. And so knowing that, you need to add some certainty to that. So these are pretty useless in a single key setup because someone's just going to take the whole bag and take your wallet. However, when you're building a multi-sig wallet, these are very, very critical. So these are tamper-evident bags. So you may have heard, you should put your seed phrase in steel, but that doesn't really do anything except for protect it from physical elements. But if you're doing a multi-sig, you're not gonna have a fire in multiple places at the same time, unless it's arson, in which case you pissed off the wrong person. Don't talk about your Bitcoin. These are tamper-evident bags. They have a one-time seal right here. So you take your seed phrase, whether it's on paper, whether it's in steel, etched in steel, doesn't matter. You can't take a picture of this. You can't screenshot this. And so when you seal this bag, and it's still sealed, no one has ever seen that seed phrase. No one's ever taken a picture of it with 100% certainty if you recorded it in a private place. If you started started wrong from the get-go, can't help you. But these are really critical in a multi-sig setup because if the hardware device is there, it's got a PIN code. Unless somebody's got the PIN code, they didn't get access to that key. And if the seed phrase is there in this bag, sealed, and there's a bag number, which you can make note of. So a real savvy attacker will go and get your seed phrase, they'll open it, take a picture of it, they'll bring a copy of these exact same bags, they'll put it in another bag, seal it, and put it back. And you'll never know unless you made note of the bag number. Then you'll know. So the rabbit hole goes forever. I have like 10 of these bags. If you want one, come get one. Not at this moment, but just come grab one. Let's see. So yes, you would store your seed phrase with the hardware device itself, and those should be in 3 or however many geographically distant locations, as distant as you feel meets your security needs. If natural disasters of a single location are a concern, the bigger that location is, the further out you want to spread them. If it's a nuclear attack, you really want to put them all over the place, right?
Can I ask a quick follow-up to that?
Sure.
Thank you.
So because if you have a key in Virginia, they can just send you the QR code here, right? That's what I'm understanding. If you need to spend and you need your second key, they would scan the QR code for you or send you a picture. Like, how would you use your key? How would you unlock with that geographically distant key?
So depends on the goal. If you needed to access the Bitcoin and someone else was holding on to it, you would forward them what's called a partially signed Bitcoin transaction. They would apply a signature to that transaction and then send you the partially signed Bitcoin transaction back with that signature applied. Then you would need to apply one more signature with your own key and then could broadcast it. If somebody else wasn't holding on to it, you would drive to that place and do it yourself, which is part of the goal. Because if someone is trying to make you do that, they've got to drive you a long way, which is going to reduce the likelihood of that attack. If someone's going to be holding on to a key for you in a multi-sig wallet, set up a duress protocol with them, a duress panic word, something that if you just send them a partially signed Bitcoin transaction, they shouldn't just be blindly signing. Because what if you're under attack? What if somebody's standing in your home at gunpoint and that's the signature that they need? So you'd want to be mindful of that, but set up a word like a vacation, place you vacation to, and something that you both can remember. Let's see, what else we got? If I have all 3 seed phrases, can you generate the descriptor? Yes, you can. You can, but you need to know the derivation path. So if you have the seed phrase, you have the public and private key. If you have all 3 seed phrases, then you have all 3 public and private keys. You just need to know the derivation path and the index that the wallet was created at. So make sure you make note of this. The output descriptor contains the derivation path. So by default, if you have the seed phrases, you don't necessarily have the output descriptor. However, unless you're using some kind of crazy non-standard derivation path, which you could, but don't, there's only a few commonly used standard derivation paths. So there's a good chance that you would be able to recover if you had that. But you should just print out, save the output descriptor. There, you can turn it into a QR code format and laminate it, save it as a digital file. There's many ways to do that. You shouldn't lose that thing. There's no reason to lose it. How does address reuse relate to the quantum computing threat? So when you spend from a Bitcoin address, it reveals the raw public key. This is how the blockchain knows that you had the private key to correspond to it. So think of like the public key as where they backwards in the private key from. So quantum computers are allegedly supposed to be able to reverse encryption through brute force. I mean, Hunter's the quantum guy, but essentially, like when you spend from a wallet, if you've sent to the wallet multiple times, you've created multiple UTX, or if you sent to the same address multiple times, you reused an address, which we said never do. But if you did anyway, because you can, then if you spend from the wallet or from that address, but don't spend all of it, you only spend part of it, like you send 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, but you only spend 0.25, then you still have 0.05 left on that address that has a revealed public key. Someone with enough computational power could use that as a starting point to reverse the private key from it. You're giving them a starting point where they had nothing to start from before. Now, as long as reverse asymmetric cryptography works, that's not a threat today, even still. So I don't want to spread FUD, but don't be naive enough to think it won't be a threat eventually. Someday it will be, probably sooner than we think. So don't reuse addresses now. Don't do it now, because if you spend from that address and then you wait 10 years and you still got Bitcoin on it, maybe by that point they've already swept your wallet because there's a balance there. But Bitcoin is based on incentives, and there's tons and tons and tons of Bitcoin out there with a public key already exposed, Satoshi's coins, because the very first type of Bitcoin address was pay to public key. It wasn't pay to public key hash. It was the raw public key on the blockchain. So there's already a starting point for 1 million Bitcoin. So yours are probably fine for now, but just don't do it. Knowledge is power. Let's see. What's the difference between what are common ways to secure output descriptors for multisig? So yeah, QR code, print it out. You can save the text file. There's a lot of different formats. Just make sure you have it saved. You can even save it on most hardware device brands. So you would just save the output descriptor on the cold card. Yeah.
And there's no security issue with that file. If it's
I mean, you want to keep it private to the extent that you want to keep how much Bitcoin you own private. Because if you have that, you would know the balance and all of the transaction history of the wallet, but no spending permission. Is that clear? What's the difference between SegWit and legacy SegWit? I assume they mean nested SegWit. So native SegWit, actually, I'm going to skip this question because I don't want to fumble over it and I don't really feel qualified to answer it. That's a little above my understanding. But native SegWit has lower transaction fees than nested SegWit. And you can do everything you can do with nested SegWit with native SegWit, to my understanding. So use native SegWit or use Taproot, usually is like the recommendation for fees. What is Lightning? So Lightning is a layer 2 abstraction on top of Bitcoin. So think of it like a bar tab where we agree to send, like I buy you a beer and then you buy me a beer and they cancel each other out. And so rather than I pay you $5 and then you pay me $5, we just agree to like keep a running tab between each other and we'll settle up at the end of it, whoever's balance is what. And so Lightning allows you to send Bitcoin more privately because every transaction is not public. It's just between you and the other channel partner. And it's also instant because it doesn't have to wait for a block to confirm. So the fees are usually in sats, like tens or hundreds of sats instead of potentially thousands. Right now, on-chain fees are actually just as cheap as Lightning. Know that if you're sending a really large amount of Bitcoin, that's probably something you want to do on-chain. And if you're sending a very small amount, it's probably a Lightning transaction. The reason being that on-chain transactions are based on how much weight it takes up on the blockchain. And weight is based on a couple different things, but it's basically how big that script, that long string is, how much weight, data, space it takes up on the blockchain. So the more complicated transactions, like multi-sig, are going to take up more space on the blockchain. It's a good trade-off worth doing because it's not that much more. And if you're not spending Bitcoin, you don't really feel that unless you spend. But yeah, typically you want to use Lightning for very small amounts because it's a percentage fee, whereas on-chain is a flat fee. So if you're sending $10 million, you just want to pay like a flat $4, not 0.1%. So hopefully that makes sense. Lightning is a little more complicated than on-chain. It's a little harder to be sovereign with Lightning too, because you also have to run a full node and it has to be online 24/7. Come next month and we'll get into Lightning and deep dive. Can a wallet with a passphrase be reconfigured not to have one? Great question. So you're not actually really configuring your wallet to have a passphrase in the first place. It's just a totally different wallet. So if you've got a Trezor with the words on it, that's, wallet 1. And if you apply the word rabbit to those seed phrase on top of it, that's wallet 2. But you can actually use both. So you could use the Trezor wallet without the passphrase, and that's one wallet. And then if you use it with the passphrase, it's a totally separate wallet. They'll have 0 balances, totally different. So it's a totally different private key, so it completely changes your wallet. That's why you need to make sure you know what it is. So you cannot configure or reconfigure. It's just, did you send Bitcoin to a wallet that was configured with a passphrase or not, or that was generated with one? If you have large UTXOs, is it best to break them into smaller UTXOs before spending them? Great question. So it depends on your goal. So typically I'd say you want to have different size amounts of UTXOs for different purposes. So from a fee perspective, you want to have as few UTXOs as possible. Again, the weight, the amount of data, the space that you take up on the blockchain is how much fee you're going to pay. So the more UTXOs, the more tiny little pieces of change you have in your wallet, the more you're going to pay because the more space you're going to take up on the blockchain. That said, those tiny little pieces are more private than one big, huge stack of Bitcoin going pfft. So generally you want to have one large UTXO that you never touch, and that's your savings. That's a couple large UTXOs. That's going to be the bulk of what you hold for a fee perspective. If on-chain fees aren't going to be 1 sat per byte forever, sure hope not, or this project will fail. That means that the number of UTXOs is going to matter a lot in the future. And because it's a flat fee, it's a flat number of sats. And the more, everyone's gonna have less and less sats, but it'll just be worth more and more dollars, but those fees are gonna be the same number of sats. So it's gonna be a higher percentage of people's total value. So you wanna really be cognizant of your UTXO bloat now. So if you have deposited to your wallet 50 times in the last year, take a couple of those and if it was from an exchange, all that shit is already doxed anyway, so just combine your UTXOs and save yourself the fees. However, if you've done something like Whirlpool or CoinJoin, don't ever do that. Never, ever combine inputs, otherwise you defeated the purpose. And they're pretty expensive to do, so you really shouldn't do that. Let's see, and also people do sketchy shit with mixed coins, and you don't want to get yourself in trouble. If you have, okay, we went through that one. In addition to holding your own copy, do companies like Casa and Unchained also hold a copy of the output descriptor, and you're technically safe as long as they're around? Yes. So the Casa app, Unchained's web app, they wouldn't be able to tell you what Bitcoin address to deposit to without your output descriptor. You also wouldn't be able to see the wallet balance or the transaction history of your wallet without the wallet output descriptor. So that is what tells you what's in the wallet. What allows you to spend from what's in the wallet is the combination of private keys that you would have. So an output descriptor would be the same as an extended public key for a single sig wallet, which is a watch only. Let's see. You should still back it up though, because if Casa or Unchained were to disappear and you're using that platform and you don't have your own copy of the output descriptor, big trouble, big trouble. So make sure you back it up. It's QR code, very easy. In addition to holding, I read that one already. What are the trade-offs for doing multi-sig on your own versus a company like Casa? Well, it's really about what you can control and what you can enforce and what you can't. So the number one reason is that you can't be here when you're gone. When you're dead, no one is here. Your knowledge of how your wallet works, your security model, all the shortcuts that you knew how to take to get to this and that, it's all gone. Unless you left written instructions, which means you also created written instructions for a potential attacker. Ooh, this shit's hard. So, you know, it's really about what you can't control. And if someone's breaking into your home, your keys that you control are, I mean, you know, hopefully you guys carry firearms, but if you're self-custodying Bitcoin in your home, you should. But, you know, you only can control that. And so having either one, or if you use, I mean, I've seen people like hold self-custody, but all of the keys are with their family members. So they don't actually have custody, but neither does the banks or any one individual, right? And so there's all of these clever like trust models that you can build when you start getting into multi-sig. But essentially it's like, you're not here to carry out your inheritance wishes, and you're also not here at gunpoint to say, oh, no, we're not signing for you. But we will not sign for you at gunpoint. And we also will be there when you're not. I mean, somebody will be there. Maybe not the same people, you know. But anyway, the company, the entity, the employees that work there, the information about your wallet without the access to the wallet is there to make sure that inheritance transfer is smooth. So it's nothing that you can't do on your own from a, you know, wallet implementation standpoint. It's a 2 of 3 multi-sig. It's a 3 of 5 multi-sig. You can import it in Sparrow and do it. But it's what can't you control? Can you set up a duress protocol with your family on your own? Can you make sure that your wife's gonna not lose the Bitcoin when you die? And how much do you spend in your waking moments thinking about that now? That's what those companies help you solve. But there's nothing that Casa or Unchained or any of these companies do that's proprietary. Otherwise, like, don't use that shit, because then it means you're not in control. You're completely dependent on that company to survive. But all of these wallets are open source recoverable, which is a critical point of using any kind of collaborative custodian or partner like that. Wow, the questions are running in. I'm loving it. Okay, let's see. If you have, what is the best setup and solution for someone who will never spend or use Bitcoin and is saving several coins for a child, and want to teach your child how to manage and and have access to it eventually? What is the best setup and solution for someone who will never spend and use Bitcoin and is saving for their next generation? So that would be a multi-sig for sure. It would probably involve some sort of attorney who would be holding on to a key to make sure that the wishes are carried out, depending on the balance. It could be done with the children if you trust them, if there's some good relationships in the family and responsible parties. Typically, if it's a large balance like that and people are thinking decades ahead of time, that you're going to do something with like a collaborative partner and some outside counsel. So maybe an estate attorney who's savvy in Bitcoin who can work with someone like Casa or Unchained to carry out your wishes for those individuals. So it's a lot to put on them potentially. And sometimes if you have a large balance, you don't necessarily want them to know what they might inherit. So, with Bitcoin, value changes dramatically to the upside, and money changes people. So there's a way to do this, but it's basically just setting up a multi-sig, making sure that your estate planner or whoever would be the executor when you're not here, be able to access that confidently. Could a wrench attack still happen with a 2 of 3 multi-sig? If someone gets your key and forces you to call Casa or Unchained to get the second and force a transaction? I don't know about Unchained, but that's not gonna happen with Casa immediately. So with our 2 of 3 structure, you got to wait a week to get that. So that's one of those. Should have said that. So that's something you can't do. You can't force yourself to wait a week to send a transaction, but Casa's not going to sign for you immediately, no matter what. So that's something that, like, using a collaborative partner like this can add, strengthen your security setup. I'm sure Unchained does some kind of verification like that. There's just no way that they don't. But yeah, basically, like, they would have to hold you hostage for a week at the standard tier, or we do a live video verification, so they have to hold you hostage, and then you have to also pass the room sweep with the camera, and then you can't mention the duress word, and then you still got to wait 2 days. They still got to hold you hostage, and they still got to have 2 other keys on top of that. So unlikely, but not impossible. Nothing's impossible, except for Satoshi coming back. How much would it cost to move from Coinbase to Cold Card, and how easy is it for a normie to do? So depends on the fee environment and depends on how many times you do it. If you withdraw your entire balance in one transaction, congratulations, you got an iron stomach. Every time you withdraw from Coinbase, they charge you a service fee. So they're the ones that are actually choosing the transaction fee because they're bundling your withdrawal with like hundreds of other people's withdrawals. And if you go and look at the transaction on chain, you'll see there's like lots of other addresses with deposits. And you know every single one of those addresses is a Coinbase customer. You just don't know who, but you know they are. And so you would essentially want to just withdraw it once or a couple times, maybe in a couple chunks, but you don't want to do a bunch of different withdrawals or you're going to increase your fees. $2, $1 maybe, 50 cents. Very cheap right now. There's literally no reason to not self-custody except for not understanding, which we're gonna hopefully have solved. Can we practice putting money in cold storage? Yes, we're gonna do that very soon, in about 10 minutes. As a CASA employee who knows this industry well, is there some sort of service or business you think in the industry needs that no one is doing or is massively unaddressed? Yeah, I think we need like a baby boomer marketing campaign because they control all of the wealth and they're probably gonna adopt Bitcoin last. And they're the ones who need it most because they're gonna get rug pulled right when they need the money most from Social Security, and their monthly income checks that most people are depending on are gonna get them nowhere. So I really think baby boomers need it more than anyone. Most of us are like in our 20s, 30s, like we got time. We'll live to see beyond the fourth turning, but Dave's laughing. Fourth turning is coming, and that's your last cycle. So baby boomers, you need to figure out Bitcoin or your retirement's gonna look a lot different than the Waikiki Beach hotels you were thinking you were gonna be at. All right, let's see. Yeah, so seriously, Bitcoin needs a marketing department. It's probably the biggest thing is that Bitcoin is this, Bitcoin is that. It's a scam, it's for criminals, it's for drugs, it's for everyone, it's for poor people, it's for rich people. There's no unified message, and that's part of what makes it so cool, but that's also what it makes it so disorganized. It takes a while to take off. So I would love to see not a Bitcoin marketing department, but several companies start to work on combining marketing efforts, not just for their own personal products, but for the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole, because the message needs to get out there. So Cash App or Spiral's doing some stuff where they have like the Bitcoin design guide. They have the images that they're working on with like the Bitcoin, like if you've ever seen Here Comes Bitcoin, it's like the big orange furry guy. Like stuff like that I think is actually really important because people are gonna find out about Bitcoin and they're gonna have no time to figure it out. You all will, because you're here already. What is cost of charge for these services? We have 3 plans. 2 of 3 is $250 a year. Premium tier is a 3 of 5 is $2,100 a year. Comes with unlimited client support. And then the private client is Let's Talk. Are there any exchanges you would use for someone just starting out? Yeah, lots. I shouldn't say this on recording, but Robinhood's really great. They're very easy. Their interface is simple. Baby boomers can figure it out. They have pretty competitive fees. Withdrawal process is very straightforward and transparent. They usually process your withdrawals pretty quickly. Coinbase would be another good option. Oh God, I can hear it now in the chat. It's like, look, withdraw your coins. I don't care where you buy them. Just like go to the place that works best with your bank, that lets you withdraw as soon as you buy or as soon as it's like getting to a point where you want to withdraw and it's like an amount that you shouldn't keep on the exchange, a couple $1,000, Strike is a great one. River's another good one. There's, Casa will have buy and sell soon in the app. Coming soon, next week or a couple weeks. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ones. Kraken's a great one. Hopefully that's enough to whet your appetite. Are there any exchange? Oh, we talked about that. What's your favorite Bitcoiner to follow that's in the public eye? You know, I got to give a shout out to our boy Tyler Stevens. He's a CEO of the space, one of the co-founders of this venue. Absolutely, like, talk about from like 0 to 100. I've never seen someone rise as a shining star in the Bitcoin world so quickly. This guy works. I've never seen someone with work ethic like him. We somehow opened this building. He wrote a book. He's like leading the industry and research on heat using heat for Bitcoin mining. So instead of mining being the product, the Bitcoin being the product, the heat is the product. Really like flipping the whole paradigm of the mining industry on its head. And he's only been in the industry like a year. And he's only been a Bitcoiner like 2 years. So just want to give a shout out to him. This place wouldn't be possible without him. And he's not really in the public eye yet, but he will be. Jeff Booth's great. His book really kind of gave me that aha moment about how technology is a deflationary force. In order for our society to be in line with that, we need to have a deflationary money. Having an inflationary money allows for those who create the money to skim between the middle. So if the cost of production goes down, but the price goes up, there's this middle ground that's capitalized. That's your tech company equity. That's where that's all going.
Lynn Alden.
Lynn Alden is amazing. You should read her book. We actually have a library in the space. It's for members, so you've got to be a member to check a book out. But all the major Bitcoin books are there. Most of them are signed by the damn author. So you can rent those out as a member. That was all the questions on here. So what else we got? That was all of them. Cool. Any others? Great. Well, thank you. It's, yeah, Mark.
Mark, hold on. Mark. Microphone.
You know, you've talked about you have to have the derivation path, right?
Yeah.
I've never written down the derivation path for any of my wallets. I've always been able to spend and, you know, send. So why do I need? I'm not clear on. And where would I find? Let's say I'm using Sparrow Wallet.
Yeah.
Okay, where am I going to find that derivation path?
Yeah, I'll show you that in just a moment when we do the demo. But the derivation path is, I mean, most wallets use the same one. Most like Ledger, Trezor, Blue Wallet, they all use BIP84, native SegWit today. So, you know, any modern wallet shouldn't be an issue. But, you know, for people who've been in Bitcoin for a while or maybe have done some different types of experimental stuff, most multi-sig wallets are usually using BIP49 or BIP84 or BIP85. So especially now, like now that Taproot exists, that's one that I think you'll start seeing more where for the last several years, native SegWit has been the widely preferred address format. But pretty soon, Taproot will likely, at some point, be the most used address format. And you may have both. You may have coins on both from eras of, you know, late 2010s, early 20s, and maybe late 20s and early 30s when you're using Taproot. So you very well may be managing Bitcoin with different address formats. Therefore, you'll be having Bitcoin wallets with different derivation paths. So I wanted to make sure you just know about it. It's not something you need to like super like sweat about, but just know that that does matter.
And you could, if you just knew the 5 different derivation paths, you could just type them in and, you know, right?
Usually, but you can type you can make up one. You can type derivation path 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that can be your derivation path.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, you can make custom derivation paths, but don't. Just don't. If you're not a developer, just don't do it.
If you had 2 or more wallets on one hardware wallet, then you would have different derivation paths for each one, wouldn't you?
So in fact, every single address you have is a different derivation path. It's going to be, let's see if we can go back here. So every address is going to be a different derivation path. So this might be the same, this wallet type, and then because it's so your purpose, the BIP44, and then your coin type will be mainnet or testnet. So these will all be the same up to here. And then if it's the same wallet account, you can have multiple wallets in the same seed phrase. You can have my Bitcoin, my wife's Bitcoin, my son's Bitcoin. They can all be derived from the same master key and different child keys. So that would be the account number. So you've got the purpose, mainnet or testnet, the account number, and then your address or change, or is it a receiving address or a change address? And then the last one here is going to be your address index. And so that's going to be, out of all of the addresses up to here, which one is this? Is it 0? Is it 1? Is it 48? Is it 92? Is it the 243rd one that you've done? And that's why the wallet will normally scan for all of the addresses in that last index until it finds 10 that have never been used. And then it says, okay, because I can go forever, just like me talking about Bitcoin wallets, I'm going to stop here at 10. So that's what's called the gap limit. So when we say, when the wallet software sees 10, or you can specify 1, 2, 10, 20, 100, when it sees that many sequential addresses in the index that have never had a UTXO on it, it stops searching. It says, here's your wallet. It's done. Make sense? Somewhat? What else? We'll go into, so we'll go into sending and receiving in a second here. I want to just end with a couple things here on the Q&A, which is that Bitcoin is a lot. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of great people in this room that can help you learn. The scariest part about Bitcoin is like riding the bike without the training wheels, because if you make a mistake, you fall off, but you can never get back on the bike because it's gone forever. So we're going to keep your ass on that bike. You may be going 1 mile an hour, but we're going to make sure that we can, within our ability, help you be successful. And if Bitcoin's going to be a foundational part of your life or for your family's future, I take that very personally. I want to help you. I will do whatever I can to give you all the knowledge I know, make sure that you are safe from the fiat overlords. So thank you guys for the engaging Q&A and the engaging presentation. Let's practice sending and receiving some coins. Wait, I got a meme for this. Who wants some Bitcoins?